This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. The Manitoba government is launching an inquiry into the construction of the Winnipeg Police Headquarters. It's a project that not only ran $80 million over budget, but was at the centre of an RCMP investigation, 2 audits and a pair of civil suits. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, this move falls short of what the city has been calling for years.
8 years after City Council demanded a public inquiry into Winnipeg's police headquarters and a series of major city real estate transactions, Manitoba Justice Minister Matt Wiebe declared the inquiry is underway, but only involving the police HQ.
If you ask the average person on the street, they know, about this project.
This project went $79 million over budget, was the subject of 2 scathing audits, an RCMP investigation, and a pair of civil lawsuits. One of those lawsuits concluded former Winnipeg Chief Administrative Officer Phil Schiegel accepted a $327,000 bribe from this man, Armik Babakanians, a principal with the main contractor on the project, Caspian Construction. All of this is well known and well established, says the new commissioner of the inquiry, who is promising not to redo the work of previous investigations.
We know that favor was sought and an advantage was sought and an advantage was given.
Labour lawyer Garth Smorang says he has the power to compel people to provide evidence and the power to hold public hearings, something he's fairly certain he will do. What he doesn't plan to do is examine why no charges were laid after the Mounties conducted a 5-year investigation into fraud, forgery, and secret commissions.
It won't be my job to second-guess the Crown attorneys. That they are expert in what they do.
According to RCMP documents, the Mounties were prepared to lay charges in 2018. The Justice Minister won't say if he ever asked why they didn't.
I think you can understand my role as Attorney General. That's not a question I can answer here.
Robert Tapper, who has acted as legal counsel for Schiegel and former Winnipeg Mayor Sam Cates, questioned why an inquiry is taking place more than a decade after the events in question. Tapper said, "I've never seen anything like this, waiting 10, 12 years to do an inquiry. That's just something that is shocking." Winnipeg's mayor said he welcomes the inquiry, even after all this time, and even though the scope is far more narrow than what council requested 8 years ago.
Any information that can shed light on what happened is information I welcome.
Smorang has a budget of $2 million to conduct this inquiry and just under 2 years to complete a final report. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
There's an extreme cold weather warning in effect for parts of Manitoba, with temperatures dipping below -30. But some people are still finding ways to embrace the cold. And one local organization is making sure the vulnerable are safe. CBC's Mike Arsenault has the story.
Skating in the coldest week that Winnipeg has seen this year? This is going to be bragging rights when I go back to Toronto.
Mary Weens is lacing up to go for a skate on the Forks River Trail. She lives in Toronto but returned home to Manitoba to embrace the winter weather.
Grew up skating on natural river ice out in the country, grew up on a farm. And so I wanted to come to Winnipeg now for a few years to check out the trails at the Forks.
Environment Canada issued an extreme cold weather warning for most of southern and central Manitoba. Weens came prepared with hotshots for her skates and wearing multiple layers.
If you're dressed for it, if you have the gear for it, honestly, there's nothing left but pleasure.
Not all Winnipeggers have the gear or the space to stay warm. Siloam Mission supports people experiencing homelessness. Last year, they developed a winter overnight warming space.
Last night, for instance, we saw 180 people who needed to stay inside. And so our staff are always checking with other shelters to make sure that there's, if they can send somebody there and there's beds available, then they do. But if there isn't, then they stay here.
Aitken says the cold weather drained a lot of their clothing donations, and they need more to get them through the winter.
We are running out of mitts, toques, jackets, boots, even things like new men's and women's underwear is something that we need.
The cold is taking a toll on vehicles as well. CAA Manitoba says they're averaging close to 500 calls per day since the cold snap, a majority due to dead batteries. CAA suggests leaving an emergency kit in your car in case you're stranded on the side of the road.
Emergency kits will have things like jumper cables, it'll have a shovel, perhaps it even might have a thin blanket inside and some flares depending on the type of emergency kit that you get.
At the Forks, Weens is dressed for the weather.
Oh, don't worry about how long you'll be out there, how long you'll last. The point is to say you were here.
and determined to enjoy the river trail. Mike Arsenault, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And here we are, weather specialist Riley Lachuk in now because we want to get right to it. Man, oh man, it's cold, and she certainly has the right idea. You just got to say that you were here.
Say you're here, embrace it, and enjoy the sunshine because these colder temperatures typically bring sunnier skies. Look at some of our temperatures from today. Winnipeg getting up to minus 19 at the airport this afternoon. This is 10 degrees colder than seasonal for this time of the year. So that puts some of these numbers into perspective here. Swan River only getting to minus 22, Roblin minus 24 this afternoon. Yes, we're under an extreme cold warning still and likely to be under this for the next few days yet as we look at temperatures close to minus 30, wind chill values close to minus 40. High pressure has really cleared us out, and that's going to lead to another cold night across southern Manitoba and really the entire province overnight tonight. Mostly clear, minus 29 northwest winds. Could see some gusts up to 30 overnight tonight. Mostly sunny to start tomorrow once again, minus 27. So another very cold start to the day tomorrow morning in Winnipeg and Brittany, getting up to minus 20 once again tomorrow afternoon. But you know what? Some blue sky. So I'll take it, even though if it is a little bit cold out there. I'll have more on how long this lasts when I come back in a bit.
Looking for the positive. Thanks,
yes,
Riley.
Fine.
He was shot multiple times, and now Winnipeg police say it was a targeted attack. A 22-year-old man gunned down after his soccer game one night last July. 2 people are now facing charges in his death, but as CBC's Rosanna Hempel reports, police are still on the search for one more.
Nearly 7 months ago, gunshots rang out here in the parking lot outside the busy Ralph Cantafio soccer complex in Winnipeg. 22-year-old Mohammed Abdullahi, who had just finished playing a game, died of his injuries. Now, Winnipeg police are accusing 3 men of being involved in his murder. Police believe was targeted.
They do believe that the suspects in this matter took methods to conceal themselves and that they were likely in the crowd of the soccer game.
Constable Danny McKinnon says police are asking for the public's help in finding 22-year-old Trezor Horenbear. A Canada-wide arrest warrant has been issued for him for first-degree murder. Police think he may be in Ontario, where he's also wanted in connection to firearms offenses.
We've indicated that he's armed and dangerous, and if you do know who he is or where he is, just call 911 and law enforcement will take over.
2 other suspects are already in custody, facing a first-degree murder charge.
These people were all likely known to each other, at least acquaintances. There was some type of conflict that occurred, possibly related to drugs, gang activity.
Police couldn't say who did the shooting on the night of July 13th or whether there was more than one shooter. Police don't believe there are any more suspects. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Mounties say a woman who died after being found outside a home in Pinemutang First Nation did not die from injuries, but they're still not clear what caused her death. Passerbys tried to save April Woodhouse after finding her lying on the doorstep of a home on the evening of January 31st. She died in hospital within hours. Temperatures hit minus 26 that night. Her sister says she was covered in bruises and the family was told she had internal injuries. However, RCMP say an autopsy revealed she didn't die from any of that. Police say they are awaiting further tests. A nonprofit is accused of turning a blind eye to the abuse of kids in its care. Those are among the allegations facing Marymount in a proposed class action lawsuit. The CBC's Kristen Annabelle was in court and has more.
Lawyers for at-risk youth in the care of Marymount Incorporated were in court today, arguing its 2023 lawsuit against the nonprofit should be certified class action. Marymount is a social services agency that runs foster homes, group homes, and a specialized school in Winnipeg. It's accused of not doing enough to prevent the abuse that happened at its facilities for decades. 7 former students and residents who went to Marymount between 1974 and 2008 filed affidavits detailing their experience.
Well, 7 affiants describe harrowing instances of abuse, a toxic culture, physical, sexual abuse, loss of Indigenous culture over a period of decades. while residing at the Marymount institution.
The government of Manitoba, Marymount, and the Rousseau Compassion Network are named in the lawsuit. The government and Marymount argued against the certification in court, saying it doesn't meet the criteria for a class action. The proposed class action would cover anyone who went to Marymount or its group homes from 1951 to present day. Tomorrow, the Rousseau Compassion Network, who is the parent corporation of Marymount, is expected to make its arguments. Kristen Annable, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The police headquarters project came with a laundry list of issues. Coming up, we'll catch you up on what you need to know ahead of the inquiry. Stay with us. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. As you heard earlier, the province has launched an inquiry looking into what happened during the construction of the Winnipeg Police headquarters. If you're still confused about the history of the years-long scandal, CBC's Caroline Bargout breaks it all down for us.
Don't you remember the Winnipeg Police Service Headquarters construction project and all the controversy surrounding it? It involved city officials, a bribe, and allegations of a conspiracy to defraud taxpayers out of millions of dollars. If you aren't totally familiar with the details of this case and why it matters, here's a little background. I've been investigating this story for about a decade, but it actually started 15 years ago, back in 2009. When City Council approved the purchase of Canada Post's old downtown Winnipeg office and warehouse to turn into the new Winnipeg Police HQ. At the time, the project was supposed to cost $135 million. But by the time police officers finally began moving in, it was the summer of 2016, and the price tag of the building had ballooned to $214 million. The construction project was also the subject of a 5-year RCMP fraud investigation called Project Dalton. Now, for 7 months, we fought to get copies of search warrants and production orders in the case. Then we finally did, and here's what we learned. One of the key city officials in charge of signing off on the project was CAO Phil Schiegel. It was discovered that he had helped Armick Babakanian's company Caspian secure the tender to build the police HQ through secret meetings and conversations, like this 2010 email, where Schiegel sends Babakanians a confidential email and says, "Please be careful with it. It's part of my strategy to get this done for you." A court later found that Schiegel had accepted a $327,200 bribe from Babakanians, which he split with the mayor at the time, Sam Cates. The first payment came in 2011. The second was in 2012. The trio had claimed the money was part of a land deal in Arizona. This is what Schiegel and Cates' lawyer told us in 2017 when we first reported the allegations.
We knew all along that the two of them were friends and did deals together. Is that a surprise? I mean, the reality is the allegation that's being made here is vastly more serious than they breached some ethical rules. They're saying they took a bribe. That's offensive and wrong.
We went to Arizona and found that Babakanians paid far more for interest in about an acre of land after the housing crash of 2008 than Cates and Schiegel had paid for the entire 25-acre plot of land during the real estate boom in 2005. The city sued Schiegel, Babakanians, and dozens of others in 2020 in civil court. None of them were charged criminally. Schiegel was found to have engaged in 14 breaches of duty from 2010 to 2012 for providing confidential information to Babakanians, as well as manipulating the tendering process to favor Caspian, and that he accepted a $327,200 bribe. He was ordered to pay the money back, as well as his severance package to the city and damages, which works out to $1.1 million.
That was the I-Teen's Caroline Bargout. For many living in northern Manitoba, getting to Winnipeg can be difficult. Flying is expensive and not an option for many people, so buses provide a much-needed lifeline to the south. Now, one company is expanding its services and helping connect more people. The CBC's Sunuta Ranawake has more.
NCN Thompson Bus Lines recently bought this depot in the PA, with hopes to have a new route running in April. The plan is to have a daytime freight service and a nighttime passenger service. Dan Quinnell is the president of the local Chamber of Commerce.
Huge win for the community. You know, we don't have a lot of big announcements, a lot of new growth and new projects happening in the north.
The last bus service in the PA shut down this past September. Quinnell says that's left some looking for a way to get to Winnipeg, including many traveling there for medical appointments.
A lot of people more and more often are relying on medical services from Winnipeg, and now this provides another safe alternative for our community to be able to get down to Winnipeg for their appointments.
The company is owned by Nisitchewayasuk Cree Nation. Jimmy Pelk says this expansion will bring in 10 new jobs immediately and will bring more revenue for the First Nation.
We had one employee and one bus 6.5 years ago. Today, we have 12 buses, 27 employees. And now we have a building here in the PA and 10 more jobs created. So,
the new route will connect 5 communities: Flin Flon, the PA, Swan River, Dauphin, and Portage la Prairie to Winnipeg. The company doesn't have a new bus here yet, but tells CBC News they're looking forward to getting one in time to start operating in April. Sanuda Ranawake, CBC News, The Paw.
It's nice to see businesses expanding in our province and employing more people, so that's great.
A little snowy in the Paw.
Yes. You know, Riley, I have to say I used to really love the color lavender and purple until I started seeing it so much on your map.
You know, I'm trying to channel the inner warmth here.
You've got some florals and the lavender on your shirt, so instead of the lavender cold warnings, we'll just take it from your shirt instead.
If you do venture out tonight, I hope you look up, and here's why. We're looking at a full moon, officially at 7:53 in the morning on Wednesday, but we are looking at our full moon for the month of February, officially the snow moon, which is named because of the snowfall that we typically see in the month of February, also known as the groundhog or the bear moon. So expect a bright, bright moon for the next couple of nights here in our neck of the woods. So look at our upper level winds from today, and really you can see a picture of cold here. Just look at some of this real cold Arctic air funneling its way down into Manitoba, Saskatchewan, into parts of northern Ontario and Quebec. I'm going to widen this out just a little bit further here, just to give you a little bit of perspective here. So you can see the North Pole, and you can see the winds rotating around the North Pole here and really just funneling all that down into parts of eastern Canada, into Manitoba and Saskatchewan. So you can see how far south some of this really cold air really digs from that polar jet stream and some of those polar winds that are funneling all that south. And really it just kind of sits here and rotates as we get through the next several days into Friday, Saturday. You can see this pink blob here. All it does is just kind of rotate around, and yeah, that's some of the coldest air in the country that we're looking at, and it's sticking around here for the next several days at least, maybe even up to the next week or so. So we'll keep our eye on that in the next few days. Again, precipitation-wise, again tonight, not a lot to show you on Futurecast, aside from mostly sunny skies. We do start to see a bit of cloud building in on Thursday. A weak area of low pressure wants to move through, and I think we could get maybe a couple of flurries out of this, but generally speaking, we're looking at just a bit of cloud cover rolling its way through as we get through Thursday before we start to see some clearing Friday and into the weekend once again. So another cold night ahead for most of Manitoba. Here's a look at your wake-up temperatures as we head into Wednesday. Minus 31 for Swan River, minus 32 in Brandon, Winnipeg, minus 27 first thing in the morning, and even into northern Manitoba, looking at those temperatures into the minus 30s. Factoring in the wind, looking at wind chills again overnight tonight in that minus 40 range or colder, which means frostbite on exposed skin in 10 minutes or less. So it's another night where you really want to make sure you bundle up, and another morning to make sure you bundle up if you're heading out early, really at any point in the day tomorrow, because we are looking at another cold day ahead tomorrow, and that cold air sticks around as I showed you earlier. So minus 20 tomorrow afternoon, Brittany minus 19s into the weekend. There's that slight chance of a flurry on Thursday, and then the sunshine back for the weekend, but temperatures remaining cold.
All right, thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, I sure hope you were able to keep warm today. There's more to come after this break. Stay with us. We're back right after this. Ottawa has named a former senior Mountie to be the federal point person on fighting the spread of fentanyl. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Kevin Brosseau's role as fentanyl czar will involve working closely with U.S. counterparts to accelerate Canada's efforts to disrupt the illicit trade. Brosseau served as an RCMP Deputy Commissioner and the senior Mountie in Manitoba. More recently, he was Deputy National Security and Intelligence Advisor to the Prime Minister. Trump has threatened tariffs on all goods from Canada, citing the illegal flow of migrants and drugs, including fentanyl. During his meeting with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance in Paris, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau warned that planned tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum not only hurt both countries, but also the U.S. state that Vance cares deeply about. Ashley Burke has more.
At a summit in Paris, the Prime Minister pushing back against Donald Trump's latest threat.
Tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum would be entirely unjustified. We are the U.S.'s closest ally. Our economies are integrated.
A message he took directly to U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. The event's cameras only briefly caught their exchange in this crowd of world leaders away from the media. Trudeau's photographer close enough to take photos. A Canadian official says the Prime Minister mentioned to Vance the impact of tariffs in his home state, Ohio. Trudeau's publicly warned that a trade war will only drive up American costs. In the U.S., Ohio is the biggest exporter of goods to Canada, and it's where Trump's promising to revive American steelmaking jobs.
We will be working with the American administration over the coming weeks to highlight the negative impacts on Americans and Canadians of these unacceptable tariffs. And if it comes to that, our response, of course, will be firm and clear.
But Trudeau isn't revealing details.
We reciprocate dollar for dollar with tariffs on aluminum and steel.
As usual, we hope that it will not come to that.
Vance also isn't saying if Canada could get an exemption.
Why are you slapping tariffs on steel and aluminum? Why are you slapping tariffs?
The Trump administration believes that
this AI summit, his first international trip to represent Trump's next era of America First on the world stage.
the United States of America is the leader in AI, and our administration plans to keep it that way.
Trudeau says he's speaking to other countries to coordinate a response. The Prime Minister will leave Paris to head to Brussels on Wednesday to sit down with European Union leaders who are also bracing for tariffs to hit them too. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Paris.
Those tariffs on steel and aluminum are set to come in on March 12th. The mayor of Selkirk says that could have a major impact on hundreds of jobs in that city. According to the Canadian Steel Producers Association, about $20 billion worth of steel is traded between Canada and the U.S. every year. In Selkirk, more than 70% of the steel it produces goes to the U.S. The industry employs more than 500 people.
I worry when they're signing these executive orders across the border, Trump and his gang there, I don't think that they're thinking about the lives of the people that these things are affecting.
The mayor says under the last Trump administration in 2018, tariffs were put on steel for about a year. He says at that time, the plant did not have to lay anyone off, but he isn't sure it can weather these new tariffs. Trump's latest tariff threats are weighing heavily on minds of many producers across the country. As CBC's Nisha Patel shows us, both industries are already feeling the impact.
Hamilton, Ontario is known as Steel Town. For workers here, tariffs are a real concern.
It's going to hurt the steel industry.
It'll be bad for everybody.
So, you have to take it as it comes.
Just the threat of a 25% tax has already been weighing on steel producers for weeks, not to mention the industry's tens of thousands of employees.
Sales are slow, the order books are low. They've actually put a hiring on freeze on hiring,
Now tariffs could take effect in less than a month. Without an exemption for Canada, businesses could be devastated.
Many key sectors of the economy that rely on steel. It has an infrastructure and a defense application. So you really want your domestic industry protected.
It's a familiar fight. When Donald Trump imposed 25% tariffs on steel in 2018, Canadian exports sank almost immediately. The trade war ended a year later after huge disruptions to businesses on both sides of the border.
We've got a big problem in Canada. We've got to find another way to fuel our economic growth rather than relying on exports to this very, very unreliable trade partner.
In the Ontario border town of Windsor, across the river from Detroit, Ryan Jordan's company transforms steel into parts like railings. He weathered the tariff storm back in 2018.
It was difficult for us. We had to diversify. We're not sure how this is going to play out at this time.
What frightens him most, he says, is the possibility of even higher tariffs.
In a month, now it's 40%, and then a month later it's 50%. I don't know how anyone can survive even quoting a project for the future.
It seems anyone in business these days needs to have nerves of steel. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
The Trump administration's U.S. tariffs on all aluminum steel imports include the European Union. As Crystal Gamansing reports, the EU calls them unjustified, and it's vowing to respond.
The European Union and the United States have the largest bilateral trade and investment relationship, making the transatlantic partnership a critical one. Now, European Union President Ursula von der Leyen is in Paris attending that artificial intelligence summit. There, she was able to have a sideline meeting with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. But in front of the cameras, neither one mentioned anything about the tariffs on steel or aluminum. Earlier, von der Leyen did put out a statement in which she said that she was deeply disappointed with the tariffs, called them unjustified, and said that the 27 bloc of nations would be responding. Now, when this tariff news broke on Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump said they would go towards, quote, making America rich again. Well, the EU's trade commissioner called it a lose-lose scenario.
We will act to safeguard our economic interests. We will protect our workers, businesses and consumers. This is the way to protect European interests, but it is not our preferred scenario.
In terms of context, steel exports to the U.S. average about €3 billion a year over the past decade. So this is an important relationship, and there will be some sort of response from the EU. EU nations and leaders are calling for a unified response. As for here in the UK, we haven't heard much from any government official, although Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, said that she does believe there is still time to negotiate a deal. As for UK Steel's Director General, Gareth Stace has said that this would be a devastating blow to the steel industry here in the UK, and he is calling on the UK government to ensure domestic production and the domestic market against what he calls a rising tide of global protectionism. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Jordan's King Abdullah was at the White House today holding talks with U.S. President Donald Trump on the war in Gaza. Trump is calling for a U.S. takeover of the territory. Abdullah posted on X that he reiterated Jordan's stance against Trump's plan and that achieving peace through a two-state solution is the way to ensure regional stability. CBC's Sasha Petrusik has the details.
It's not a complex thing to do. And with the United States being in control of that piece of land, a fairly large piece of land, you're going to have stability in the Middle East for the first time.
U.S. President Donald Trump repeated the proposal that he has put forward to have the U.S. take over Gaza, not to buy it, not to conquer it, but just to simply take it over and to develop it with hotels and office towers and houses. And what would happen to the Palestinians who live there? Well, they would be moved to, as he put it, parcels of land in Jordan and Egypt and anywhere else where somebody wants to set up a home for them, and they would not be allowed to return. He said much of this while he was sitting next to King Abdullah, the leader of Jordan, who is in a bit of an uncomfortable position because Jordan does not want to take in millions of Palestinians. They made that clear. Egypt has said that too, and so have other Arab countries. But Trump is putting the pressure on because both of these countries, Jordan and Egypt especially, rely on U.S. help to the tune of more than $1.5 billion a year. Trump is saying, though, that this is going to happen, and in his words, will create peace in the Middle East.
All the stories you hear about the Middle East not really wanting peace, that they want war, they want this, they want to go a certain place. Let me tell you, those stories are false. They want to have peace.
Jordan's king didn't really have much of an answer to all of this. He suggested that Arab countries, and Egypt in particular, will come back with some kind of a proposal. And as far as Jordan's concerned, he said that it has to take care of its own interests.
Mr. President, I truly believe that with all the challenges that we have in the Middle East, that I finally see somebody that can take us across the finish line to bring stability, peace, and prosperity to all of us in the region.
So a lot of questions being asked, and much of it originating from the White House. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, making the most of the cold winter weather, Manitobans are embracing, yes, winter peg. We'll take you to one neighborhood to see one woman's winter project and how she's enjoying this winter. Stay with us. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
This is Manitoba. And this is Manitoba on your smart TV, because CBC News is now streaming local. Get local headlines, weather, and community notices, plus newscasts and live programming on your favorite connected device, all for free. It's called the CBC News Manitoba streaming channel. See your community on your connected TV and mobile devices. CBC News Manitoba, your local news streaming channel, now available.
This place, every community has a tale to tell.
And CBC is here to share them.
Watching, listening, reading, streaming. CBC, telling Manitoba's story wherever you are.
Canadian premiers are in Washington this week. They're on a joint mission to convince Trump to drop tariff threats against the country.
No matter if it's Democrat or Republican, I have yet to hear one elected official down here and say, that's a great idea. Let's attack Canada economically. It's never been said.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford was speaking at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. He said a trade war would threaten the crucial relationship that benefits both countries. All 13 provincial and territorial leaders will be in the U.S. Capitol Wednesday for a series of meetings and events. Travel agencies across the country are reporting that hundreds of Canadians are canceling trips south of the border. That's in response to those U.S. tariffs. And as Michelle Gassoub reports, the U.S. tourism sector is warning that could threaten tens of thousands of American jobs.
When I travel, I'll be telling people I'm from Canada.
A surge in Canadian pride brought on by a potential looming trade war with the U.S.
I don't like his politics, the way that he's treating Canadian people or Canada.
It's not just a war of words. This travel agent says Canadians are canceling trips to the U.S. in droves.
But this time definitely feels different. This has been a much more tangible reaction from clients who are actually outright canceling trips.
The potential dollar impact of those cancellations is big. According to the U.S. Travel Association, a 10% dip in inbound travel from Canada could translate to $2.1 billion in lost spending and jeopardize 140,000 American jobs.
In most destinations in the U.S., Canada is the #1 international market. So looking at places like Las Vegas, Palm Springs, Orlando, Phoenix, a lot of those Sunbelt destinations are going to be hit really hard.
Those in the travel industry say the weak Canadian dollar was already impacting U.S. travel. The economic threats have many Canadians saying anywhere but the U.S.
Canadians are taking a stand in solidarity. They're showing Americans, or rather the U.S. administration, where they're going to spend their tourism dollars.
So far, it's hard to put a figure on how many trips have been canceled. Data from Statistics Canada and the U.S. Bureau of Transportation don't yet reflect the last 2 weeks. But the message in the travel industry is clear.
When I've been speaking to some of our customers, what I'm hearing a lot is trust. The trust has been broken. I think that's just the same word that I keep hearing over and over again. And they're just not feeling safe to travel there right now.
Canadians staying close to home in the face of so much uncertainty. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
Google says it's changed the name of the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America for U.S. users accessing Google Maps. The company made the change after Trump signed a proclamation on Sunday. It was one of the multiple executive orders from the U.S. president since taking office. For 4 centuries, the site has been referred to as Gulf of Mexico. In Mexico, users will still see the original name. For the rest of the world, Google Maps will show both names. Well, I bet people that are looking to go on vacation right now, that maybe not going to the U.S., as we saw in that story, but many wanting to fly somewhere hot.
Yes.
At least if you're in Winnipeg or Manitoba right now.
It's not the worst if you bundle up for it.
It's not, but you know, a beach would be nice right now.
Yeah, I agree. If you're heading out with the dog tomorrow morning, make sure you put the booties on.
Yes.
And the coats. Mm-hmm. And dress yourself up too.
Yeah, you want to stay bundled up because it can be dangerous.
Exactly. We'll start with the dog walking forecast for Wednesday. I've got 4 dogs in this picture. I don't know if you can see them all. Suki, Kato, Peanut, and Gronk. Thanks, Gabriella, for sending this picture, and many dogs there. You can send yours to talkback@cbc.ca. Especially if they're dressed up for the winter weather. I'd love to see that in the inbox after the show tonight. So minus 27 to start tomorrow morning. Winds staying relatively light tomorrow, but I mean, at temperatures like these, it does not take much of a breeze to put a wind chill factor into things. So by the afternoon, minus 20 and minus 23 by the evening. Thought I'd take you big picture here to look at some of our daytime highs and just how expansive some of this cold Arctic air is. So into the Greater Toronto area, Southern Ontario, minus 2s this afternoon, minus 19 in Winnipeg. Regina only getting to minus 22 this afternoon, and some of that coldest air over the territories right now. Iqaluit at minus 28 this afternoon. That was a daytime high from today. So it just gives you a sense of where we've seen some of that coldest air really over the territories. Manitoba, Saskatchewan. Yeah, another cold one overnight tonight into the minus 30s into the west. Minus 32 in Brandon, minus 28 in both Winnipeg and Gimli, and into the minus 30s for northern Manitoba as well. Factoring in the wind first thing in the morning, looking at that wind chill into the minus 40 range. Again, this is frostbite on exposed skin in 10 minutes or less as we head into the morning hours tomorrow, especially when you start to see some of these minus 39, minus 40 and colder numbers as we get into the early part of Wednesday. We will see a bit of a reprieve as we get through the afternoon hours, but we'll expect some of those cold wind chill values and cold temperatures really to come back as we head Wednesday overnight into the day on Thursday. So by lunchtime in northern Manitoba, looking at minus 26 in Thompson, minus 28s for Gillam, for Churchill, really doesn't go much further than that through the afternoon hours. Minus 27 in Churchill by the afternoon. Really a mix of sun and clouds. I think these icons maybe are overdoing the cloud cover a little bit, but certainly looking at that cloud cover ebbing and flowing throughout the day today, as we've seen through parts of the province of the afternoon. By lunchtime in southern Manitoba, temperatures climbing out of the minus 30s in the west, but minus 26 in Brandon, minus 22 in Winnipeg. Looking at temperatures closer to minus 20 by the time we get to the afternoon, Brittany. I'll have more coming up in your 7-day forecast when I come back as well.
At least your clothing says spring.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Thanks, Riley. Well, on Monday's show, we took you to a winter fun zone built by friends in Wolseley. Today, CBC's Jim Agapito takes us to East Kildonan. He checked out an urban igloo whose bright colors are turning heads.
Now, Marnie, it's pretty cold today, and I'm looking, and you built, I guess, would be a winter refuge out here. Tell me about what you built in your front yard.
I decided to build a community ice igloo for the kids and people to walk by. I'm big on building community and safe neighborhoods and getting out in the wintertime, being active. So I decided to do an ice igloo. 2 years ago, I built a rainbow ice wall around the yard, and it was a huge hit with the neighbors and the kids, and they always stop and talk to me about it. And so something that I thought I would do.
But you built an igloo. Tell me about the process. Like how did you build this?
So you start off with plastic or tinfoil containers. You fill them up with water, a little bit of food coloring, a dash of salt. You stir it all up and you leave it overnight. The next morning you go and you put them out and you start piling them up. You create mortar with snow and water, and you start stacking them and secure it with water.
So Marnie, describe for me the igloo.
The igloo is approximately 6 foot wide for circumference and about 4 foot wide. I decided not to go too tall because I wanted it to fit underneath the tree nicely, but I wanted enough headspace for people to be able to enjoy, because I do want this as like a winter gathering place. Come on, let's have a tour. So we put in the little hooks to like hook all the lights up. They have fallen out once, but that's okay. You'll notice like we just like had to put the mortar in. These layers were a lot easier. These ones were a little bit unique of shape, as you can tell up here, where we had to be creative on and use tons and tons of mortar.
How do you make sure it just stays?
Well, these ones were quite difficult. So we would have to hold we would put the mortar on and we would have to hold it for a few minutes. So once you had the first two started, then the other ones kind of went in.
Well, this is such a feat, that you should be very proud of, and this is definitely showing us your winter.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And I would like to thank all of the neighborhood. All of my neighbors and community have been a huge support, and stopping and giving me a high five or a thumbs up, or stopping in to say, hey, I'm so-and-so, can I take pictures? Can I go check it out with my kids? Absolutely, because this is what winter's about. This is what community is about, bringing people together.
Love that. Well, Riley is back with a last check on our forecast. When we come back, stay with us. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. A mystery lurking beneath this Picasso painting has been uncovered. The portrait of an unidentified woman. Art historians suspected something might be there due to brushstrokes that didn't relate to the finished portrait. Their suspicions were confirmed through infrared imaging and X-rays. Pablo Picasso painted the woman over with a portrait of a sculptor friend in 1901 at the start of his famous Blue period.
All right, having a look at your Wednesday at a glance, very similar to what we saw through the day today, forecasting minus 20 through the afternoon hours tomorrow. A mix of sun and clouds. Wind chill in the afternoon, making it feel closer to minus 30, so prepare for another colder one tomorrow. Winds west 10, gusting to 20, maybe a gust up to 25 through the afternoon hours tomorrow. So yeah, temperatures like these continuing through the next several days at least. Minus 19, chance we could see an afternoon flurry through the later part of Thursday into Friday. Friday brings a little bit of wind with it, north winds 20 gusting to 40, highs of minus 19 into Saturday. Minus 20 again for Sunday, a mix of sun and clouds, dipping a bit as we get into Monday, minus 21 and minus 18 by the time we get to Tuesday. So by the time we get to mid next week, we'll start to climb in terms of temperature again, but still staying below seasonal for at least the next week, week and a bit.
I like that you said climb. Climb to minus 18.
I know. Well, in some competitions, being top dog or an underdog isn't always the point.
Case in point at the Westminster Dog Show, where there are no shortages of very good boys and girls. Here's your daily lift.
Everybody loves a dog, and they don't care who we are, what we have. They just love us, and we love them. That's why I'm here today.
I like her ponytail. It's the final day at the 149th edition of the Dog Show in New York. This year attracted more than 2,500 contenders spanning 200 breeds of dogs. The prestigious dog show took off in the 1870s in Manhattan.
In case you didn't know, the Dog Show is the second oldest sporting event in the U.S., only topped by the Kentucky Derby horse race. And if anyone ever combined those two, well, it would make some sort of dog and pony show.
I like
Quite
that.
something.
You're either wearing your best at the Kentucky Derby or showing off your best in your dog.
Yes.
Best in show either way.
Exactly.
Well, if you were going out with your dog or your pony, you might want to keep those booties handy. Stay warm.
Quick in, quick out.
Yeah, very cold. We'll see you back here tomorrow.